Hello, everyone. It's another episode of the Hello Mentor podcast. Today we have Rohit from Sabai Health with us. Hi, Rohit. Welcome.
Hi, Eric. It's a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure. I've been in the insurance industry for 21 years.
Yeah, we're just speaking like off camera just now, like such a long time.
So if I think of it right, I worked in a large established organization, AXA, for 17 years
Nice.
across 5-6 geographies. And then I worked in what I call a small, medium listed company, which is June Protect, for 3 years and 9 months. And now dibbling and dabbling with the startup world. Totally different. Large corporate to SME to startup is, every day is a new day. It's a new flavor.
And I would really love to dive into that change, if you like, because I worked in corporate in my early career, and obviously now I run a company, so I know that there are a lot of things that can be quite different. I'm particularly curious because clearly in the insurance industry it's highly regulated and stuff, and startup is like like a cowboy. No, I wouldn't say cowboy, but it's a very different world, right? So I'd like to see. I'd love to hear more later about how that transition has been like. But could you tell us a bit more about Sabai Health? Like what are you building? What are your goals here?
So Sabai Health is in early stage. We probably by the end of this year should have what we call a market ready version. Right now we have a beta version, which is family, friends, and extended people just testing it. It's essentially a health and wellness AI native bot. It seamlessly, so you don't need to download a separate messenger or anything. It seamlessly integrates into your WhatsApp, into your Telegram, into your Line, etc. And you just type away your questions. It could range from things like preventive health to fitness, to food, to queries about how you could be a healthier self. It reads images, so I send a photo of my tongue sometimes and say, what do you think about my health? I send my reports and ask it for its view as well. It is not a doctor. It doesn't replace a doctor. There are a lot of what we call horizontal health AI players. There are a couple of them in India called August AI and GV, there are others as well. And then there are vertical players. Vertical is like Naluri, for example, into mental health that Azran does. There is Ash AI, which is a very specific mental health player. We are not. We don't play that space. So we're at a horizontal level. We don't intend to get into the doctor space. We don't give medical advice. We help you become a better version of yourself through simple messaging platforms.
I see. Right. And I'm super curious because obviously the AI world is evolving very fast, right? You're competing even with the foundational models itself. Although recently I read that ChatGPT said that they won't go into like medical advice and stuff like that, right? I don't know how. Again, I'm not super familiar with the space, but would you be able to differentiate yourself from the foundational models?
It's a great question. So I don't think someone can replace a doctor, right? But one thing we all need to be cautious about is the world of AI is changing so fast. In the past, we used these things loosely, right? We said, this is digital transformation is going to change the world, or internet is going to change the world, and many things. I say this with a lot of duty and care. And the whole reason why I left a high-paying job as well was I believe that AI is as big as the discovery of fire and wheel in human life. Like how fire changed how we cook, consume food, wheels changed how we move around, AI will change everything. And I believe if people are saying from a distance, it's not going to change my life, they really haven't understood what it entails. So to your point, the world is changing where people don't necessarily want to receive information in the traditional sense. So what we do, without getting too technical, is we are multi-LLM, which means we don't talk to just one LLM. We talk to multi. So we talk to, Gemini, we talk to DeepSeek. We have multi-LLM. We also talk to other health-specific databases, right, which are publicly available. We also have a panel of doctors.
Right.
So they're not doing doctor advice. They're just helping us give the right kind of insight to the people who ask a question.
Right.
What happens is you wake up in the morning, you have a headache. You don't want to go to the doctor immediately. You just want to know, hey, I have a headache. What should I be doing? So it always tells you, hey, if you have a continuous headache, you better go to a doctor. I'm not a doctor. But it'll give you some insight of, okay, what do you need to do? You know, or I go to the gym. I want to know how much protein to take. Of course, with bells and whistles, it'll tell you, ideally, this is how much protein you should be taking.
Right.
You know, so it essentially helps you on that journey. It also has reminders, memory, etc. So it goes through that system as a buddy. We also use vibe coding.
Right.
So what do I mean? And I'm learning all of this, right? We can actually create different personalities based on who you are. So the other day we were trying, what if my bot was a barista? So in the morning it would tell you, hey, Eric, what can I brew for you today?
Right.
You know, so it's a different personality. So if you're someone who likes to talk to us in a crisp way, once you message with it a few times, it will naturally start giving you very short answers. If you're someone long-winded, it'll give you long-winded answers.
Right.
So it's kind of learning your personality over a period of time as well.
Right.
It's almost like a buddy. And when we look at the health space, there are 3 main queries customers have. And that itself shows something very interesting. The first and the foremost is mental health. Why? It's still a taboo to tell people that I'm depressed, I'm sad, I'm angry. It's still a taboo. Yes, thanks to people like Ash and Naluri and various other people, we're trying to break this. It's getting better, but it's still a long way. So people's first query is mental health. Second query is sexual health. I don't like talking about my sexual life with someone else, or reproductive health. The third is preventive health, where we talk about protein and food. And, you know, I send a picture of, it knows I want to lose weight. And then the other day I sent a picture of me having nachos and said, you think it's a good choice? It remembered and it said, for weight loss, it's not such a good choice.
Right.
Can you go heavier on the, on the vegetables and around it and reduce the...
Right.
So it's kind of what we are trying to do without, replacing any of the traditional systems. But also be mindful that doctors are starting to use a lot of AI. If you've heard about open evidence, which got one of the biggest fundings recently, doctors are using it. We don't have access to it because it reads reports and it's giving doctors insights. Doctors, of course, make subjective calls, which you and I can't. There's another one called circadian AI, invented by a 14-year-old Indian American, which uses your phone as a stethoscope and within 7 seconds with 90% accuracy is able to identify certain heart ailments.
Oh, wow.
Again, you and I can't use it. It's used by, clinics and hospitals. I think the world is going to change dramatically with all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not so surprised. I remember once when I was in the clinic and, obviously I wasn't so well then. And the doctor actually Googled information in front of me. And it was like, I maybe if you went back 10 years, that would be so shocking. But for me, it's like, it's okay. I mean, it's okay for you to check, right? Because then maybe you want to be extra sure and want to show me something that's also online. But it goes through your judgment. Obviously, you don't just take everything.
Which is why there are a couple of health services coming up in the US and Bangkok, etc. One of it says, at the same time, the doctor is keying in information on what's my, assessment, what are they deciding as the way forward treatment plan. I also get it as an update. The minute they click enter, I get exactly what the doctor has planned. There's another one which is talking about diction of the doctor, because when the doctor talks, sometimes I don't understand. The AI takes the notes and gives me a sense of what did the doctor say? What is the assessment that they're talking about? So to your point, absolutely. But what AI does is, because it's multi-source, it's obviously a lot more researched. Of course, there are risks around wrong information, hallucination, and all of that, which is where the training comes in, the learning comes in. You have to constantly train it. Please understand, AI is not a human being, so it doesn't have the emotional or the ability to think like a human being. You still need to train it to get to where you want it to get.
Right, right. And and also I can't see AI completely replacing people in some sense because I'm not sure what the right way to describe this is because there's some kind you still need someone to be accountable for decisions and recommendations, right? So it goes through some human filter at the end.
So probably a side topic without going into healthcare, but I was recently at one of the larger universities. I was running a guest lecture on AI and insurance and where things could change. Obviously, there was a lot of nervousness among the students. What happens to jobs, etc. This is what I told them. I told them, you won't have a problem in finding jobs because you're relevant. Today. The people, with no offense, who are going to have a big issue are those within the 40, 50-year age group who want to just enter data, want to do the same repetitive tasks, don't want to upskill, don't want to reskill. They're in big trouble. I put a LinkedIn post recently and I said, if any operations team in an insurance company doesn't get rid of a third of their workforce in the next 3 years, it's because they're lazy. There's no other excuse.
Right.
So what that means is AI is going to replace jobs, but AI is also going to create jobs. And as I was reading recently, one of India's large industrialists has put up that there's still so many jobs for which we can't find people. So while the world goes around the fact that AI is going to replace jobs, there's a lot of jobs for which we just can't get people. And that's the world we live in. If you are entering data, if you're doing the same manual task, if you're doing the same task which has a clear entry and exit point, hey, you know what? It's going to go away. And if you refuse to upskill, if you refuse to reskill, you will be jobless, unfortunately.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and I mean, you're right. I mean, the jobs are there, so there's kind of like a mismatch between like demand and supply, right, over time, and yeah, and also most likely, I mean, no one can really see exactly what happens, but most likely AI will enable many industries to start, building different kinds of businesses and all that. So the jobs will be created there.
So you look at my startup, right? It's a very lean startup, right? But you look at the kind of resources we have. Obviously, we have the developers, the chatbot developers, the engineers. We then have a lot of impetus on people who understand the customer. Because it's very important. Because do I understand the customer well enough? No, I need someone whose day job it is to analyze what are the queries coming in from the customer with an individual basis. They don't have access, but on an aggregate basis, what queries are we responding the right way? How do we train the system? What kind of prompts go in? And that's the skill we need more and more. If you want to train AI cannot think on its own. Let's be honest, right? And that's where we need these skills to help them, get better and better. So, and it's not easy to find that skill set. I can tell you, it sounds very. My team and I discussed this should be one of the easier skill sets to find. It's not, because it needs high EQ, a decent amount of IQ, and a lot of agility, flexibility, have listening skills. Not easy to find these skill sets.
Right. Okay. Can I go into the healthcare space for a moment? Because you've been there for so long, right? Obviously doing insurance. What's your general view of like Malaysian healthcare right now? Or maybe I may ask a more specific question. What's one myth about Malaysian healthcare that you think needs to be changed?
Across the region, Malaysia is not alone. First of all, we need to understand that Malaysia is not alone. The healthcare system is fundamentally broken. Care is getting better. It's a fact, right? Across the world, people are living longer. So healthcare is definitely getting better. The system is broken. The system is flawed. Why? I just read a report that medical inflation next year in Malaysia is going to be 16%. Do insurers increase premium by 16%? We don't. We have all kind of pressures to not increase it by as much. If we don't increase it, it means we're already working at a case where how are we going to make money? We don't control the hospitals. We don't control the networks. The same condition, a hospital may decide to do an open surgery. The same condition, they may do a keyhole surgery. Again, there are subjective call hospitals make, which is fair, and they're here for making profits, private hospitals. So how do we drive it? It's a very difficult conversation. There's a lot of abuse that happens as well. Like, I'll give you a couple of examples. Many, many years back, we found that shoulder-related claims was 15% of our claims. And most of it did not result in any sort of conditions. So we put a simple change, which wasn't popular at that time, saying no cashless if it's not a surgery or it requires a intervention. It's only pay and file, okay? And pay and claim, as file and claim. Within 6 months, shoulder-related claims was 3% of our claims.
Which is lower.
Very low. It was 15% earlier. Now it's 3%.
Right.
The reason is people didn't hospitalize themselves as much as they did before. I wrote about this in my blog. Loosely, I call it medical tourism. I don't like, touch wood, lying down in a hospital, and it's my worst fear. But there are a lot of people who like lying down in a hospital. I have fever. Can you please admit me? Can you please admit my son? And that also escalates costs, So there's cultural changes we need in Southeast Asia. And why do I say Southeast Asia? Because we're largely similar in that behavior. There are changes in the hospitals that we need. There's no clarity around why you're charging, what you're charging. The Life Insurance Association CEO had put up some bills, recently, and it had gone up as well, where he had questioned some, Insurers, we are down the value chain. And then the last one is, as an industry, we haven't done a great job in fraud management. Across the world, there is an estimation, different studies, different estimations, but the most conservative is 5%, the most optimistic or negative one is 15%. It says between 5 to 15% of our claims could be fraud. And if we can save that, that's a lot. Every 1% is billions in the world. But as we get smarter, the cartel gets even smarter. So it's a bit like cybersecurity and everything, right? As you get smarter, you put more bells and whistles, they will find ways to, work around it even more.
All right. So sorry, what, I didn't realize that. So they're like cartels or groups that are trying to defraud insurance companies.
Is to fraud health insurance companies.
Oh, that's right. Oh, okay.
Is there in motor as well across Southeast Asia? The fraud is very high.
Oh, wow. Right.
But again, it's not unique to Southeast Asia. We're talking about Southeast Asia, but even more mature countries have fraud.
Right.
It just gets more sophisticated.
And I suppose if you're able to eliminate a lot of this, then it actually lowers down the cost.
Straight away, it's customer benefits. Everyone benefits. We benefit, customer benefits, everyone benefits.
Yes. For the more legitimate users, right, of the insurance. Oh, wow. Okay. So there's fraud. There's also so you're saying that there are some people that like they get hospitalized a lot, and for things that they do not need to be hospitalized for, and obviously that drives up costs. Again, we're thinking more from everyone who buys insurance, right? So
the thing is, many times we assume everybody has to behave the same way. Interestingly, I recently at a conference was listening to one of the banking CEOs talk about, NPAs, loans not paid. And they said, sometimes we have the best profile and we think from an underwriting perspective, we've given the right people the loan. But what we don't understand is sometimes you may have the right profile, but you still won't pay the loan because you just don't want to pay. It sounds weird, but it's how it is. It's the same way in insurance. We are assuming everybody has to be like us. Don't do fraud, don't abuse the system. And then if I don't claim, I expect everybody not to claim. Sometimes I get this message from people saying, I haven't claimed in the last 5 years, but insurance doesn't work that way. I can't price individuals.
Right.
It's on an aggregate basis.
Right.
So if my portfolio is bleeding, I can't say, okay, I'm going to charge someone else more than you. Of course, there's a certain level of differentiation that happens with age and other stuff, but you still underwrite on a portfolio basis.
Right. Not on the individual basis, right? So,
Sorry, you underwrite on an individual basis. You still price a product on a portfolio
right, you
basis.
price upon portfolio. Got it. Right. Okay. And earlier you mentioned that there are three big pillars of healthcare, right? Mental, sexual, and preventive health. And because Sabai Health, essentially, you're doing something that's horizontal, it's going to cut through all these things. I'll ask a bit about like mental health for a moment. Like, what's your view on Malaysians, how they treat mental health issues right now?
It's still a taboo. It's improving, thanks to some of the guys I know who tried a long way. When you go to mind faculty, you realize, okay, there's a lot more people I'm seeing today than I saw, some years back. I have used it extensively, not just me, but for my kids, my wife. We've all used it at different points. Why? Because at some point we want that independent, qualified person to listen to us and help us. Recently, I used Ash, which is a pure voice over app. I noticed that I'm generally known as a very calm person when it comes to work, high pressure, all of that. But whenever I'm with my son and watching him play tennis, I'm a bit of a nuisance for him, because I'm half the time telling him, you could have hit there, you could have hit here. And I'm like, what am I doing? So I used Ash, and Ash helped me. And the last tournament I went with him to Sabah, I was sitting far away watching him play, and I thought I had the best time of my life watching my son play. It doesn't matter how he played, where he played, the fact that he's competing. I think my son had his best performance because he had no nonsense from his dad. He was figuring it out, losing, winning, let him figure it out at 12 years old. And Ash helped me. Ash told me what to do. So I was talking to Ash, good day, bad day. I would talk and could give me advice. My son has a sports psychologist, who's helping him. Of course, there are others who come and tell me, you're mad. You don't need a sports psychologist for a 12 years old. And I say, no, because I've never played sports at a good level. Do I know what he goes through? No. I played, roadside football, roadside cricket. For that, there's no peer pressure. I could even push my friends away and say, no, I'm going to score a goal now. But he's not playing that level. So it's very different. So he needs expert help. So I think it's a big topic. Corporates have been talking about it, but I think they can do a lot more.
I see.
Workplace stress is a real thing. Workplace harassment, workplace stress. We don't realize sometimes when we are doing it. We have a deliverable, so we say, hey, can you turn this around at 10 p.m.? We never ask, hey, what are you doing at 9 p.m.? And I feel that's where there's a lot more we can do in Malaysia in terms of the help we give. Unfortunately, mental health is still seen as an exercise of avoiding absenteeism. Mental health is seen as an exercise where everybody comes together, laughs loudly, has one event and goes away. It's a lot more than that. You go through a journey. And for me, it's the most important focus area, because as we get into a generation which is more and more on their own, I have these conversations with dads who are my age, right? And sometimes we have this conversation saying, hey, our generation, we didn't have this issue, And I go, maybe we did. We just had different ways of managing it. Today, the kids are living a very different life. So naturally, the rules of the game also have changed. And that's why I believe that, whether it's workplace, whether it's the newer generation, the way we deal with them also has to, fundamentally change.
Right. Uh, you mentioned your son goes to like a sports psychologist, is it right? And this is someone that so this is not someone that coaches him on technique, but just like a mindset, mental side, right? Oh, that's pretty amazing. I was talking to someone the other day. So it actually doesn't matter whether you're in sports, even as a CEO, or even if you're hiking up the mountain. You might think it's a physical thing, but a lot of it is mental.
So I may not look like it, but in the last 3 years, we climbed Mount Kinabalu, a group of 12 people. I remember it was a joke. It was a good friend, bunch of friends. And there was one of them in the group who was making fun of me saying, boss, if you cannot climb, you wait here, kind of a thing. And then I finished it, and for various reasons, he couldn't. But the point is not that. The point is, I thought I climbed because of my mental strength. I did a half try. I did a cross harbor swim. Every time I always say is more mental than physical. Physical, of course, I train. Of course, I go to the gym 4 days a week and stuff like that. But it's mental, The last 1 kilometer in Mount Kinabalu is mental. The last 1 kilometer in a half try is mental. The last 1 kilometer in a half marathon is mental. The last climb in Yosemite in that cold is mental. When you lift weights, the last set is mental, and that's what differentiates people, in my view.
No, I agree. Like even as someone that say I run a company, and I know many people run companies, and I find that a lot of times what helps people go the distance is not how clever you are or how smart your strategy is or how persuasive you are. Is what happens when you face that mental challenge. Because it doesn't even if you're the smartest person, but if you can't break through that cliff, it doesn't come out right.
It's a great point, because how you react sets the tone as well. I remember many years back, almost 8 years back, we had this big launch that was due. It was Malaysia's first online health insurance product. It did very well. It was a product called E20. We launched it from a piece of paper to the market in 3 months and 5 days, which was unheard of in insurance. Everything launched. And it was done by a bunch of really young team, all Malaysians, young people. We forced through, and we won at that time the Asia Insurance Award. We won the AXA Global Awards. And our budget was a fraction of what all these bigger guys spent. Now, 2 days before launching, at that time, the chief customer experience officer and head of e-commerce, who was the brainchild, he came to me sweating, saying, we have a problem. I said, okay, sit. And he told me, we forgot to add children for health policy. So I said, okay, how long does it take? No, we can't do it 2 days. So what do we do now? Do we launch? Do we not launch? So I told him, it's okay. I was expecting something much bigger to happen, because if you're doing something in 3 months and 5 days, how much ever you manage risk, etc., you're going to have something that you miss out on. Haven't we all as CEOs had meetings where we've gone to a meeting and suddenly we are launching an app and white screen comes on? It's part of life. So I told him, it's okay. We launch. After a few weeks, we will launch it as a kids module and make more noise. And I could almost see those two people in the room when, wow, so simple. But I think that sets the tone, because next time around, the others also understand these things happen. And as leaders, we have to make ourselves vulnerable. I've always spoken about all the mistakes I've made in my life. And I've said that if you really want to innovate, you have to be ready to be fired. It's something I've always said, because otherwise you're only doing incremental stuff. If you really want to be innovative, you have to be ready to be fired. That's when you do real innovative, edgy stuff. I learned it obviously from others I have watched. I remember when I became a CEO for the first time, 4 months into my role, I screwed up on something. And I called my manager and I said, I want to meet you. He said, come, let's meet for lunch. And he knew I was really stressed because I wrote a long email and all that. And he said, I want to go to my favorite beef noodle place. I said, okay. And I'm thinking, I have a stress, and this guy's more worried about going to his favorite place. Fine. So we went to this favorite place. He started eating. He said, close your laptop, let's eat. And I'm obviously wanting to talk, and this guy's like, it's okay, eat. Then I ate. Then he said, okay, before you say anything, let me tell you one thing. I knew this is going to happen. At some point, you're going to screw up. It's normal. If you don't screw up, I wouldn't have put you there. And I was like, wow. It suddenly changed the whole... Because if he had reacted saying, how can you screw up? It would have been a very different way. I would have taken it back, and then I would have taken it back to the team, and then, that culture sets it. So, to your point, I think a lot of it starts with how we manage stress as individuals. It's important to define your own framework. For me, when I go to the gym in the morning, I have the same trainer for the last 7 years. And he's so structured. I've written even a post on him. There are days when he appears and I don't want to appear, and he says, I'm waiting outside the gym. I'm like, okay, I have no choice. I have to drag myself now and go. But what helps me is when I hit the gym and I lift weights, I forget everything. And when I come out, I have endorphin release. I'm very happy. Suddenly I look at problems very differently.
Right.
So I think all of us have to have our own framework of how we deal with things.
Right. And I'm very curious in relation to mental health and insurance. I'm not from this space, but my understanding is that, say, for example, in America, I believe if you have a mental health issue, you can claim insurance or something like that, if you see a counselor. But it seems to be something that's difficult to replicate in many other places. So I don't know, because as someone who's been in the space, you might understand the challenges of doing this.
It's very technical. I'll give you an example. If someone is autistic, how do you establish what is extreme autism, what is on the border autism, what is in the middle? Because the care levels vary significantly. I'm not an expert. I'm just giving a very high level example. How the care level varies very significantly. One of my sons was on the spectrum, right? Obviously, we freaked out when the first thing came. They said, no, development-wise, he's okay. IQ-wise, he's okay, but socially, he's on the spectrum. Okay. And they said he's on the wide spectrum. And he spoke quite late. He spoke only when he was about 3.5 years old. So we had a speech therapist for him. We helped him through it. He's now totally different. At 11, his report came. He's not even in the spectrum anymore. He still has needs like all of us. But there was intense work. My wife gave up her career at that time. She's now focusing on her career. She jokes with me that she's the sole bread owner. I'm the one spending all the money now, but which is true. Now coming back, so she gave up her career and she worked with speech therapists. She worked with experts to help him through this journey. Why do I say this example? Is for insurance, it's difficult to understand at what level do we cover mental health. Dementia, how do we establish dementia? So there are some people who are testing. I know there's a Hong Kong-based insurer who covers dementia. There are one or two insurers in Malaysia who do cover, but it's more at a limited scope level. It's not as expensive. Part of it is because I think science is still evolving around this. For example, autism. Did we have this level? Maybe we just didn't know, right? 30 years back, we didn't talk about autism so much as we are speaking about it now. It was there. The extent of which seems more now, but we don't know. That's anecdotal anyways.
Right.
So naturally, insurance also has to move at times. It's like most things. The second startup that I support, which is AXA AI, which is into renewable energy, the reason we set it up also is because renewable energy is a new space. Insurers don't know how to underwrite it. Electric vehicles, insurers are still figuring out how to underwrite it. In Malaysia, if you buy an electric vehicle, the table that prices it, we convert from CC to watt to price your electric vehicle. So actually the pricing is not an electric vehicle pricing. It's the pricing of a traditional combustible engine, which you're converting into what for now. Of course, some of these global insurers have global expertise. They apply their own knowledge, etc. But it's still a very flaky way of doing it because they don't have enough data.
I see.
So to your point, mental health is also like that. We don't have enough data around different conditions. How do we establish what is covered? How do we cover it? For how long do we cover? So that's kind of where some of these newer businesses are still in an exploratory phase. And that's why you are seeing a lot of startups pick up these spaces. You look at cyber insurance. There are a lot of startups who are doing well in cyber space. There are startups, like one of the startups I'm sitting on the advisory board in India called FlashAid. They do student protection plans, but they do very different student protection plans. They do, of course, the normal credit, life, health, etc. But they have something very unique. If a student goes abroad to a college in UK or US or something, as far as it's in the approved list and subject to certain conditions, if after 3 or 4 years of your course you don't get a job, they'll give you a placement assistance allowance. So you can continue to stay there for another 3 to 6 months. Right? Very unique. Similarly, they cover universities, digital universities. A lot of them have dropouts. So based on data, they will cover you if your person drops out. The same way when you talk about renewable energy, the same way you talk about electric vehicles. So there's a lot of this space which traditional insurers, because of the way they work and because they have bigger things to prioritize, are still figuring out. And that's where a lot of startups come in. They may be eventually acquired by these larger companies or they may just work with them. But it's an interesting area where we're seeing develop.
Right, makes sense, right? So sometimes the lack of data, and because of the lack of data in the space that's also evolving very quickly, it's very difficult to build a very sort of stable foundation or framework, right? To figure out how to insure, right? How to deploy insurance in this space. But it's good to hear there are a lot of startups are sort of attempting to do it. So eventually, because they're so focused, and one thing you mentioned just now was that sometimes with the corporations, they have got bigger things to focus on, and it's also my belief that every company, no matter how big or resourceful they are, their ability to build things is limited to the attention of the CEO. So the CEO can only say, look at 3 or 4 things, that's it, right? Even though they have say almost unlimited resources.
I remember many years back, around 10 years back, when I first time came to Malaysia, there was this general insurance company of which I was the operations head for that, the COO at that time, AXA Affin. One of the conversations we used to have at the XCOM always was every time I used to push something on digital, e-commerce, innovation, disruption, the traditional channels used to always say that, hey, give me that 5 million, I'll give you 20 million business, or I'll give you 30 million business, because if I invest this, I can get more business. But your 5 million is not going to give you even 5 million in the first year or the second year. And it's a very difficult conversation because sometimes you're responsible for immediate dividends, profits to your shareholders and to your board. So would you as a CEO rather, obviously at that time my CEO was a lot more, so he found a balance. But it's a fair question, right? It's a fair question. Why should I put in 5 million into something which is not even going to give me 5 million back versus put 5 million in something which may give me 30 million? And that's the point you mentioned about, that's where I think different players come together. Certain models and certain innovations and disruptions are probably better done by people outside the traditional ecosystem. And certain things can only be done by those who are within the traditional ecosystem, simply because you need the balance sheet power, you need the compliance, you need the strength, etc. to do it. So it varies, depending on which industry you're talking about. Which problem you're talking about.
Right.
But the dynamics also have changed. 10 years back, 10 plus years back, insurers never gave any credit to insurtechs. We always thought, these guys are just fly-by-night operators. And insurtechs at that time had a lot of arrogance, most of them, not all of them. that, oh, we are here to disrupt the insurance space and kick them all out, right? We're like going to remove like travel agents. Here comes the bunch of innovators. A few years later, neither happened. Insurers realized they can't innovate at the speed of these insurtechs. Insurtechs realized I don't have the balance sheet power or the compliance power or the regulatory power or the risk power to do the things that the bigger boys do. What did they do? Some of the large insurers set up what they call innovation labs, or appointed the youngest, brightest person as the head of transformation, chief transformation officer, chief digital officer. I've always asked this question. You don't have chief electricity officer. Why do you have a chief digital officer? Because digital should permeate across through the company. So what does a chief digital officer actually do? That was one way for CEOs and boards to show that, hey, I'm doing something about this. Almost all of it failed, with some exceptions. Then came the phase of what I call real collaboration. Insurtechs realized, listen, I can't change the world immediately. I'm going to pick spaces where I'm good. And I'm going to work with established organizations. And established organizations realized I can't do everything. I'd rather partner. So if you look at some examples, like if you look at Shift Technologies, which does fraud investigation, one of the best, they developed it. So insurers work with them. It makes it a lot more easier. So I think the industry's evolved over a period of time to understand that everybody can't do everything, and the best way to move forward is to collaborate.
Right. And so there obviously these new startups or new players. When they first come up, everyone has this big vision, this big story, and then as you grow, eventually you kind of hit the real world, and you sort of understand why the world works the way it works, and then in order for you to succeed, you still need to work with the incumbent in some sense, because the incumbent has access to different things, right? And find that partnership, right? Right. Also interesting, you mentioned that many big organizations do set up like this digital arm, because they want to try to do something. They want to put someone there that maybe they think has the potential to bring this digital. I don't know.
Some have worked. For example, I remember DG had this thing called DGX, and Alban, and I met him once, told me, the CEO then of DG told me, I rather disrupt from within than get disrupted. And they came up with some interesting concepts. Praveen, who ran it, was quite a smart guy. You can do that, provided you know what you want to disrupt. And you also understand that you can't disrupt everything. It also helps build a new culture in the organization. But to your earlier discussion, it's important that you have someone at the top who's clear on what's the mandate.
Right.
And what are you trying to achieve out of this?
Yes.
That is very important.
Right.
Otherwise, you're not really going to be successful.
Right. Yes. And I mean, we have worked with DG before, so it was. I thought it was quite a good initiative.
Very, very smart bunch and they had a great team. I think that was the other one, because I worked when I was at AXA, we used to work extensively with them. Every time you met someone, you knew, okay, there's a bunch of smart chaps. They know what they're doing.
Right. Okay. And back to sort of like your own background, growing in the corporate environment, right? Before you've now come out and start your own thing. We read somewhere that you were one of the youngest CEOs in Malaysia.
I was the youngest CEO at that time.
At the time? Oh, wow. Okay. What was that journey like, rising in this environment?
So I started in India. Started in data analysis. I was crunching data analytics. Then I moved to strategy. Then I moved to business development, M&A, banker, customer experience, operations, and then eventually became the CEO. One, I don't think anything replaces hard work. I always say there was this 3 years role I did between late 2009 to early 2012 in Singapore, when I worked in the then regional M&A and corporate development team. So AXA had this regional team which Because at that time, AXA was very aggressive. So we were doing a deal with ICBC in China, Mandiri in Indonesia. We were trying to do something in Malaysia. We did some deals in Hong Kong. So we were very active, India, etc. And that team which I worked in, I always say the 3 years were the best 3 years and the worst 3 years of my life. The best 3 years because I have never learned more. It was complete baptism by fire. Because we had 4 very senior executives running the team who were handling different files, all CEOs, COOs, etc. And 4 of us were attached to the different people as associates. And it was baptism by fire. You would appear in morning in Thailand presenting something. In the evening, you're turning around models. And I very soon discovered that I'm not the smartest in the room. I'm not the most intelligent in the room. And I'm definitely not the most competent in the room. So what I did was we were a very hardworking team. So we used to work from 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning to 7, 8 in the evening. And invariably I would have dinner with one of the bosses. They would go back home. I would go back home, take a shower. Nobody knew this except for my friend and ex-colleague in India. I would go back to office at 9, 9:30. I would be the only one. Switch on lights. I would be the only one in the entire office. And I will open the files and I will work additional 3 hours because that was my way of bridging the gap in competency. I also took help. I would call my friend in the US, in India and say, how do I read this file? I would call my friend in UK and say, how do I, I just had to work that much harder because the first thing I realized, I'm not as smart as them. It's okay, The second is I made mistakes all through my life. And when I look back, I made mistakes. I made mistake in Tune Protect. I made mistake in AXA Affin. I made mistake in AXA Affin GI. I made a mistake in AXA Hong Kong. I made mistake in India. I made my mistake all through my life. They were honest mistakes. Mistakes made because I wanted to make a difference. And there were a lot of successes also. If there were not successes, we wouldn't be where we are today. But you have to be ready to accept the fact that if you really want to be pushing forward, you will make mistakes. I always woke up from those mistakes and moved on. It's about what did I learn from it, The third is please spread yourself with good people around you. When I became the CEO of AXA Affin Life, a few months into the role, I felt my ex-com doesn't challenge me at all. They're all just very nice people, very smart people, but everybody say yes. I told my HR, we were looking to hire a COO, and I said, I want someone who brings execution mindset and is ready to challenge me in the ex-com. And we found someone from HSBC. May joined us. Great team we were, all of us. And for me, everything is as of yesterday. So the minute we have an ex-com conversation, can you do it tomorrow? Can you do it as of yesterday, right? And when I say that, she was the first one who would say, okay, I'll come back to you. Give me today. I'll come back to you on whether this can be done in the next 2-3 days. And she would say, okay, boss, I can do it. But these are the 2 things I can't. And then I used to say, that's a fair conversation. We may not be able to do everything, but this is what I want. And when that conversation started, suddenly everybody realized, oh, it's okay to challenge, Rohit. It's okay to have this conversation. Over a period of time, so much so that, somebody who's well-respected in industry, training and development professional, John Cum from D Jungle always says, you always ensure you have a chaotic ex-com, but they work. I said it was by design, it was not by chance. Because I believe that an argumentative team with healthy habits is a successful team. One doesn't argue, doesn't care. Full stop. So it's very important to be surrounded by the right people. And the last I would say is work-life balance. I didn't follow it for the first 20 years of my career, I must admit. Do I think it's the right thing? That's a different debate. I didn't. But I had something, which is when I came home, my work's gone. I did pick up work again after my kids went to sleep or whatever it is. But I ensured that balance was followed, that, I do play with my kids. So that's I you know um I like traveling, so I do travel. Of course, sometimes you're physically traveling, not mentally, but it happens sometimes when your
Right.
work is consuming you. So I think that's quite important as we grow up in our career to understand this.
And
You know.
when you're sharing this balance, are you so more alluding to that? I mean, if you want to make it sustainable, you need that balance, right? Or else you can't keep pushing, you burn out.
That is one, but second is your mental side needs a break. I was never a long sleeper, but I was a quality sleeper. And my team is always ask me, boss, when do you sleep? And I'm like, I sleep pretty well. My wife will tell you that I'm knocked out means I'm knocked out. Yes, I may sleep only 5 hours, but actually that's damn good quality. I'm not even waking up, touch wood. To your point, I think it's very important. It's underestimated that we need to find that way where we're doing something else. And that's part of why I do all these things. I'm not able to stick with one sport also because I get bored. Now my latest passion is play tennis. So I played some tennis tournaments, blah, blah, blah. It just keeps me going. It just keeps, I may get bored, then I may pick up something else. I think it's important. It's very important.
Right. And earlier you mentioned about, making sure you have the right team around you, team that can debate ideas together. I really love that. And one thing I've sort of learned over the years, sometimes it's important to build a team where it's not so easy to do because we're all human beings, where they're not so personally attached to their ideas and they are able to actually come together and debate it with the goal of winning. Like, let's find the correct idea together. It's not your idea versus my.
Also, don't build a team where you're personally attached to them. It's something I've followed. It's something I've had some intensive conversations with some people who I've really respected. So all through my career, I probably had 3 people who I would call friends from work. When I say friends, deep to the extent that I can't tell them, something which I shouldn't be telling, Because I always say, if you're working together, I should be able to tell you, Eric, you're doing a good job. But I should also be able to tell you, Eric, you're doing a bad job. I should be able to promote you. I should be able to fire you. Unfortunately, that's what I'm paid for. Or fortunately. So people sometimes misunderstand that line. So I'm close to people. I meet people for lunch. I meet people. But I can still turn around and tell them your job quality is not good. So it's very important when people tell me, oh, my colleagues are my best friends. I'm like, no, you've crossed the line already. I don't believe in it. You can have friends at work. You can't have best friends at work. I've had 3 in my career, but luckily we moved on to different things. My best friend, I incidentally met him in my first job, and he's a maverick. He never wanted to work in a company. He's one of the best data analysts I know, and he runs his own travel, bike travel and homestay in India. So our careers never merged. So, but yeah, I met my best friend there.
Right.
He's also happens to be the best friend of my wife as well. So, so it's something I've followed as a line. Don't mix the two because it becomes very difficult. Sometimes people get very emotional and say, I'm so sad today, Rohit. You know why? My colleague is going through, a divorce, and I want to cry. I know you're emotional. It's good. We all should have empathy. But hey, you got to have a line. Now you have a problem. How are you going to manage the stuff? Because you're suddenly emotionally attached to this stuff. You have to have empathy. I'm not saying don't have empathy, but don't have sympathy.
Right. And I mean, in Higher Elite, there's a post out there to remind everyone, like, we should behave more like a professional sports team. Ultimately, we are here.
I read that board outside that you're a sports team. I love that.
Yeah. Just to remind everyone. I mean, we are working together as teammates. We have that relationship as teammates, and maybe we are not robots here. We're all human beings. But we should all just let's not misunderstand why we're all here in the first place, right? We're trying to win something together, So
Absolutely.
right. So while it's important to have that empathy. And then Rohit, I'm personally trying to. I've swung left and right on this myself. So while I was much younger, I don't think I could really. I couldn't distinguish like why you should draw some lines sometimes, like boundaries at work. And I had so many good friends, which I still am very good friends now. And then I swung the other way when I suddenly felt that, it made it very difficult for me to manage them if I became very good friends with them. And so I completely went cold. There's a period of time where, my boundaries were very high. But that actually prevented me from managing well as well. So that finding that middle ground is a bit of an art, maybe takes some experience, right?
It's a super difficult thing. And I think we go through so much change. One of the things I love doing is caliper profiles. I've done my caliper profile every 2 years. And sometimes I ask John, can I see my old caliper profile? Can I see my old? It's very interesting to see how we evolve, right? You could use different formats. You could use MBTI, you could use caliper, you could use DISC, use what you like. But it's important to do self-reflection. I remember 10 years back, my caliper profile was super high on aggressiveness, super high on assertiveness, super high on empathy. Everything was 95 plus. And I remember looking at it saying, how the hell are you going to do this? 5 years later, my empathy was 50%. Does it mean I'm less empathetic? No. But it just means my role made me not have the time for the things I did before. It's very important to find that your own balance over a period of time. But I also think you become what your team is, and you also become what your team needs you to be. For example, I worked with a bunch of achievers. If I'm going to drive an achiever even more, it's probably not the right thing to do. I give them a different kind of support system. When somebody's not driving performance, then I probably drive them on performance. So there's different hats you have to wear with different people as well as a leader. You as you grow up, you will realize in your career, you may not realize it if you're a young leader, and over a period of time, I realized it much later. I actually could have, now that's not bias, but I actually have different faces for different people. And people go, wow. And I always told people one thing in my team. If I start micromanaging you, your time's pretty much up. It's time for you to pick the message there somewhere that I'm getting micromanaged. The door's not far away. Because I'm not someone who micromanages people, but I can tell you, I can micromanage by day with people. If I've reached a point where I don't have any, we always have this conversation. I don't know if you've tried it as well. Do you start with 0% trust or 100% trust when you hire a new staff? And I always ask this to my team, right? And it's very interesting. For me, I start with 120% trust when I hire someone new. Otherwise, I wouldn't hire that person. But there's so many people. It was almost a 50-50. Whenever if I were to ask the 5 people here, it'll be very interesting. 2 of them are going to say, I start with 0%. And they have to earn trust. And I go saying, why did you hire that person? But in that, they have a fair appeal saying, no, I don't know you. I've hired you based on certain skill, but you have to prove it to me. So to your point, obviously your behavior changes on the person as well, how you handle the people. It doesn't mean it's bias. It just means you have to treat different people differently. Someone who is crazy driven by performance, if you push them more on performance, they're going to break. You push them on something else. So you have to have different ways of handling. I remember when I became the COO for the first time, I was 35 and my CTO was probably late 50s or mid 50s. And he was really knowledge, literate, intelligent, knew what he's doing. What am I going to tell him? I've not even seen what's inside a server. And I'm going to manage the IT head. Obviously, my value is different. My value to him is scalability, flexibility, Are we thinking about this kind of things from a future? And then he goes and figure out how to do it from a technology perspective. So I think this constant reflection is very important as a leader, because it kind of gets you also to figure out, am I on the right path? I'm very proud to say that I have about 10 senior executives in Malaysia, including CEOs and um, CXOs, who were people I worked with and I helped develop. 1% support, because largely it's your own development, but I helped play a role. They were part of the talent plan, etc., and they grew into bigger roles. But I also can tell you I've fired many, many people. Now, some say the best leader is someone who cares for the employee. Actually, I care. That's why I fired the person mutually, because we realize this person doesn't mean that person cannot succeed somewhere else. Maybe that person will completely prosper in another organization, because it's always about fitment. So that's what we do as leaders. We help people grow, find the right fitment, and help the business step up.
It's interesting you mentioned the thing about about caring about your people. And it's something I also, I'm learning, right? I'm figuring out how this works. So there have been many situations where someone was sort of underperforming. And because I was trying to be understanding and I was trying to be very supportive, it dragged on too long. Let me simplify it. It kind of dragged on too long. Actually, we should have known it wasn't a good fit. Maybe they've done better elsewhere. And dragged on. But the way I sort of interpreted it in the beginning myself was, I'm being a kind CEO. I'm being a very reasonable CEO. But what I didn't realize, right, by having this person here, it affected the larger team.
Exactly.
Right? Because some of them, not only did they have to pick up the work, not only did they have to fix the mistakes, some of them maybe their promotions got delayed, because the team wasn't performing. Because everything, if the team wasn't performing, we don't have as much funding and money. Everything's related, right? So I always struggle that. So if I'm telling myself I'm being kind to this one person, actually, am I being unkind to the other 10 people that's sort of affected by this? And it's not that easy a decision to make, like understanding what is the line between, like, I want to be supportive, but at the same time, we are working as a team here.
There are two things here. One is any delay you make on people decision almost always bites you 100%. We always say, right, in the hiring world, if you hire someone wrong, you're pushed back by 18 months. Because we hired the person, 6 months for the person for whatever that, the confirmation period. Then if the person goes away, you need another 6 months to find someone for that person to settle down. 18 months. A wrong hire pushes you back by 18 months. A wrong decision, same way, can push you back. The second, invariably, this person not doing their job, not because they're not competent, it's just that they're not competent in what we want them to do, is putting more pressure on the talents in your organization. One of the things many companies in Malaysia don't realize is because our talent depth is quite limited, right? Please ask your talents, is being a talent a badge I'm proud to wear? Or is it something that I don't want to be? You know why? Because if I'm a talent, you give me more work to do. More than I can even manage. Yes, I'm motivated. Yes, I'm driven. But are you taxing me so much that I can't even survive and I'm no more a talent? Because I have so much to do. I have no time to think, innovate, differentiate, that I'm just doing things. It's like some of those Instagram videos where you see, right? There's someone whose job is cut. They'll send the thing through it, cut. If you are sending 100 things through the thing and all he has to do is cut, he has no time to think whether he could do it differently. He'll cut, go home. It's the same with our talents. So and a lot of it starts with inappropriate distribution of work.
Right. And related to this subject, what are some of the hardest conversations you've had to have as a CEO with your team? How do you prepare for it? And sort of like, how do you try to approach it?
Yeah, there are different times, right? Sometimes the sales numbers don't stack up, and you sometimes have to, have a very difficult conversation with people who you've been together for many, many years, people who followed you from company to company, and then you have to have these difficult conversations. These are not easy. For me, I follow the SOCO a lot, single overriding communication objective logic a lot. Every meeting I go to, I decide what is the one message I want to give out during this meeting. And I have 3 sub messages, nothing more. And I have a very simple Samsung notes, my Samsung phone, so I have a notes. Every time I go to a meeting, even today, I write 3 points. It's just my way of saying, if I cover these 3 points, I think I've achieved what I want out of this meeting, and I'm done. I don't go back thinking, oh, should I have said that? Should I have said this? So I've had a very, very difficult conversation, and it kind of one of those rare occasions where it also transferred home. Many, many years back, we automated a significant part of operations, and because of using Lean and RPA, and we got rid of about uh, 12 to 14% of our operations team. But the good thing was HR, because that was a growth stage, was able to find a method where they had other things they could do, provided they're ready to skill themselves. They had to put a little bit of effort. And we also gave them 12 months time. Towards the end of the 12th month, there were about 8 people who still hadn't, moved to anything. And there was a single mother who came, said she wants to have a conversation with me. And she had a difficult conversation with me. She's a single mother. She has to take care of kids. So, please don't let go of me, even though I'm getting a payout, blah, blah, blah. It was very difficult for me because she was obviously emotional. I also have family. I was brought up by a single mother for different reasons. My father passed away when I was very young, and I can imagine what she would have gone through. So it's kind of, even if you don't want, your mind goes off there, right? You want to stay objective. So I stayed objective, and I told her, listen, we gave you an option. We gave you enough options to reskill yourself, upskill yourself, or take another role, and you refused all of it. This role simply doesn't exist. What do I do? So the person tried to find different things. Can I just sit here and do this, do that? I said, unfortunately, there's nothing, right? I came back home, and I never discuss work at home. But one of those days I was having my tea and I was listening to music, and my wife figured out something is not right. So she's asking me, and I said, this thing happened. And, my wife gave me the cutest answer. You're quite mean. How can you do this to her? So I said, oh, you're not making me feel any better. But I had to stay to my decision because objectively it was the right thing to do. I can't be any different to a single mother because then there are 34 other people who could have come and told me, various reasons too. So I have to stay objective. And I stood. Do I think it was the right decision? Yes, it was. Do I emotionally think it was difficult? It was very, very difficult. But I went back to my objectivity. Why did I do what I did? And we gave the person an option too. The person didn't want to take it. It's life. It's life, right? So as far as your objective, and that's why SOCO saves me all the time, because I feel I have a lot of clarity when I go into a meeting on what I want to say. That's why whenever I speak, I say 1, 2, 3, because this is where the 1, 2, 3 comes from. It's easier for me to break it down.
Right. I suppose one big challenge for anyone in a leadership role is sometimes you have to make an unpopular decision because you believe it's the objective correct one, right? And that is the cost of leadership in some sense.
The cost of leadership as you grow up the ladder, it's a pyramid for a reason, even though we don't practice it, etc. The cost of leadership is you get lonelier and lonelier at the top. If somebody thinks otherwise, it's not true. Yes, you have to build a team around you. Yes, you have to have people to talk to, etc. But at the end of the day, it's your decision. The buck stops with you. And there is always a difference. You may think your team is very much with you, but at the same time, they are looking out to you, right? And it's very important to understand that they are looking after you for symbols. So when you're vulnerable, they like be vulnerable too. When you're going to be someone who says, I never make any mistakes, they're going to be scared of making mistakes, and they will also believe they can't make any mistakes. And naturally, the organization will have no innovation, no disruption, because nobody wants to make a mistake. Everybody's covering your own backside. I remember I had this executive coach in one of my past organizations, and I have this habit of sending late night messages, not because of any other reason. I like to listen to music. My wife's a musician, but I also love listening to music. So I would come home after my dinner. My wife and kids sleep early, so I would put on music and listen to music. And that's when my creative juices run. And then I will send some idea. Invariably, it will be something. And we had this big WhatsApp group. Wherever I am, we have these big WhatsApp groups. And then from 10 p.m. to like 11:30, 12, the group will go ding, 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 because people are all excited, or I thought, and people would, because I would give some crazy idea and people would reply or give some thought and all that. And I got some feedback from HR saying some people are not necessarily very happy about this. There are others who are excited by it because they are the kind of people who want intellectual stimulation, but not everybody, right? The group had 174 people. So it's, So then my executive coach told me something very interesting. He said in Asia, we have a bigger focus on authority. So when you send a message, so I send a message, you're not necessarily you have to reply. He said, no, a CEO is sending a message. They think it's important for them to respond because you're sending it from a place of authority. And I was like, I really didn't think about it that way. So I took that feedback on and I stopped sending messages after 8 p.m. Unless some emergency, I don't send anything. 5 days later, my chief customer experience officer knocked on the door and said, can I ask you something? I said, yeah. Are you leaving the company? So I said, no, why? She said, no, you've got completely quiet in the evenings, none of your intellectual conversations. I said, no, this is just my executive coach. So I just did. So she was like, can you next time not do these cold turkey stuff? Can you tell us when you're doing something? I said, yeah. So coming back, leadership is very lonely. And that's why you need that system. But you also have to accept leadership as well.
Right. Yeah. Earlier you talked about when you hire someone, some people start with 100% trust and some people start with 0% trust and you have to earn it. Where are you exactly of this?
120% trust.
You're still at 100.
Otherwise, don't hire the person. That's my view. But I understand why some of my team feels otherwise. Many of them believe that they have to earn the trust. I'm not going to give it to them day one. But for me, 120%.
Right. Still at 110%. I'm sure you've gone through situations.
No change.
No change. Right.
So, because when you're hiring someone because you need a certain skill set which you don't have. If you don't trust that person to know that skill set, then why did you hire the person? Then you shouldn't have hired the person. The debate is very simple for me. You should always promote someone from within. You should hire someone only if you have absolutely no chance. And the difference is so stark that you need someone externally. Otherwise, you should always go internal. Right. So if you're hiring someone and you don't trust the person, that means the difference isn't so wide. Why did you hire the person in the first place?
Oh, interesting. All right. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Right. That means you're so convinced that that this person brings something that internally we do not have. Right?
And it clicks, right? For me, when senior hires, I normally headhunters and HR sometimes. I'm generally quite fast in my hire. But when it comes to senior hires, I do at least 2 or 3 meetings before deciding this is the person. Once I feel this is the person, I then do 2 or 3 meetings because I want to meet them in different situations, different conditions. Because, hey, I'm going to spend a significant part of my life with you. because we spend more time with people at work than our own family.
Mm.
So if I'm not comfortable spending time with you professionally, there's a big problem. So when I hired XCOM members, sometimes I used to have 2 and 3 2-hour meetings. Because I also want to see whether can I have a random chat with you? You know, is that someone is the kind of person with whom I can have different business, intellectual, and other conversations. I have to feel comfortable, right? If you hire me and you don't even like the look of me, how am I going to work with you?
Right. Yep, makes sense. I've got 3 last questions.
Sure.
The first one is something I mentioned at the start of this conversation about. I'm so curious, what is your transition like from a very corporate environment to, obviously like you're trying to build a startup right now. But could you share a little bit about what this experience has been like?
Very different. I'm an accidental entrepreneur. It was not by plan, yeah. So I decided to take a career break after June. It was planned. I took my son for some tennis to the US. I spent a lot of time with my mother. My mother lives in the US. And once my mother had enough of me staying with her and was ready to kick me out, I decided to come back to Malaysia. No jokes apart. I spent a lot of time just watching US Open, traveling with my kids, blah, blah, blah. And then I took up a couple of advisory roles and just went back a little bit to my angel investments and stuff. And I actually had just about started interviewing as well. I had a couple of situations where things didn't work out with the other side, or I didn't like it, both ways. And that's when these business opportunities came up saying, hey, you know what? We need somebody's expertise, different kind of expertise. And then I said, wow, okay. That's why if somebody asked me when I quit, oh, are you going to start up a business? Or are you going to company? I said, no, I don't even know. I'm going to keep it empty. First 6 months, I'm not going to discuss with anyone anything because I'm going to go enjoy myself and then figure out. It's very different. I'll give you an example of business planning in today's AI world. And this is quite useful probably for some of your listeners who will be in strategy, planning, etc. Because I ran strategy for AXA across Asia for 17 entities, and AXA was a multi-billion company. So proper established strategy team. So we had a strategy team in Hong Kong, which I was leading, which was the regional strategy team. And each country used to have 1 to 2 people, doing strategy, some bigger teams. How do we do strat plans? And why do I give this example? Because this will give you an example between the new age AI plus startup versus traditional companies. How did I do strategy? First, I would come up with a storyboard. I would run it past my CFO. My CFO will say these changes. Then I will tell my team, okay, collect these data sources, this information, prepare it in Excel sheets, make it look beautiful. We put some information in the slide. We'll show it to the CEO saying broadly, are we aligned? Then he or she will give some information. Then we'll beautify it. Then we'll add more. Then we start the rotation of sharing it with different people. Every time you edit language, edit, look and feel, slide, blah, blah, blah. How do we do business plan here? On a Sunday morning, we block 4 hours, all of us together. I put my storyboard as a prompt into perplexity.ai. We've set up a EBOA over there as well. So it gives you advice as well. We put a prompt. It came up with a broad storyboard because it has all our Sabai information already, right? Then we tweaked the storyboard. Then I shared it around saying, guys, everybody agree? So everybody give some feedback, blah, blah, blah. Then you said, okay, Sabai, okay, Perplexity, take these data that I've ingested in the following files into the file. Research this information. So it researches information, gives me source. I look at it. Once I share it around, everybody's okay. I say, okay, now transfer it to Gamma slides. It prepares the Gamma slides. I shared it around. BOA and other members say, can you tweak this? Can you tweak that? Fine. I put it back into the prompt. The slides come back again. I'm not proofreading. I'm not editing. Suddenly, none of this is needed. These were entry-level jobs that were there earlier. And my business plan was done in a matter of days versus months that I put together. So obviously, startups work very differently. I don't have an assistant. I don't have a driver, which I had earlier. I don't miss it. I miss the people, but not the roles. So it's very different. obviously for me, because of the training I've had, even though I've known as someone who innovated, disrupted, etc., because of the natural training I've had, I think of risk compliance and those kind of stuff. Because the industry I come from, in startups, I notice don't necessarily think that way, because the first thing is to get the bread before you figure out how to protect the bread. And I am looking at how do you protect the bread, So it's a natural differentiation that you have in styles and personalities. What I like, it's faster, it's more nimble, there's zero ego. Everybody seems to do everything. Nobody hesitates to be the cleaner, conductor, driver. There is no hesitation. In large organizations, obviously, you have that, but of course, lacks processes. Right.
Yes, right. Yes. So risk tolerance is higher, like a bit messy. And I mean, I like what you say about no ego. In some sense, I think in a startup, Hyrely is not exactly a startup anymore, but we still retain a lot of the same kind of mindset. End of the day, when you're in a low resource environment, it doesn't matter who wins an argument. It just matters that you get the right decision, right? So it's also the way you approach things is very different. Whereas I think sometimes when a company is extremely stable, it's very high in resources, then these things, I'm not saying that people don't care, but it kind of matters less and less. It really matters that you're right in terms of climbing.
Because people also start to have their comfort zones, their territories, their boundaries, their outlook, etc. In startups, you have funding for the next 6 months. Our focus right now is to get that next level of funding. So nobody here has time to go ring our roses. We just have to get there. So simple as that.
Yeah. And the next question I have was, you mentioned earlier just now about how you used to send late night messages, and obviously through that conversation with executive coach, you realized that, so you changed that. Were there other things in your 20-year journey, or your journey as a leader where you sort of flipped, that you changed your mind on?
Yes, definitely. So I was a lot more democratic in the beginning of my career, and I did change to become more directional. That doesn't mean I didn't cover people's feedback. I still did, but it was different to what I did earlier, which was let's build it together. Here, I still used to give them a broad expectation and then say, within those expectations, let's build it together. So that was definitely a change I went through. I also started building a lot more review rigor. It's something one of my managers, Emmanuel, taught me about empowerment within boundaries. I used the word empowerment too loosely earlier in my career. And over a period of time, I realized there's nothing called empowerment without any controls. So he used the word empowerment within boundaries, and I followed that. So yes, I give full empowerment, but you're still subjected to the review rigor that I establish. So I know where you're going. You have a compass which I gave you, or we've established together. While you're going there, I still need to know whether you're still going there or you're heading somewhere else. It's something I've had to tweak, and something I've spoken a lot. One of the things I also do is mentorship a lot in my time now. I work with leaders on that. And one of the things I always tell them is, this is where a lot of times we see, hey, how come everything was defined, but we ended up where we are? And it's because of that review rigor missing.
Can you tell me more about how you developed that review rigor?
So in our insurance industry, we are very fixated on financial KPIs. Financial KPIs are what I call lag indicators. There's a word called NBV in life insurance. It's called new business value. It's the most important KPI that most insurers will measure. Essentially, it's the margin we are making. But the margin is influenced by so many things, from what is the interest rate, what is the persistency renewal ratio. There's so many factors that influence a margin. If I do one project and I say that's going to influence margin, unfortunately, in the world we live in, other things don't remain constant. When we used to do statistics as kids, we used to say other things remaining constant. In the world, nothing remains constant. Times keep going. So then you have this huge argument between finance and business saying your initiative didn't impact my bottom line or didn't impact my top line. I always tell them finance is a lag indicator. It's very important. Yes, I come from a finance background. So I focus a lot on lead indicators. Lead indicators are those where I can straight away see whether there is improvement happening or not. For example, lead indicators are customer KPIs. Are we getting more customers in my preferred segment? Are they buying more from me? Are they staying longer from me? Are they recommending more people? It's a very nice way of knowing. If you're in claims, is your claim cycle time improving? If you're in customer service, is your average customer response time improving? How that flows to financials is a second step. So a lot of time I used to have a lot of rigor around building that lead KPIs I want to measure, because a lag KPI for me is a secondary step. And then how frequently, right? Some we would do weekly, some we would do monthly. Dashboards are quite important. Simple dashboards helps us all see things in the same way. And I'm a big believer in balanced scorecard. I detest individual KPIs. If you're in the leadership team, all of you are responsible for every KPI. So when I joined Tune, for example, one of the first KPIs I got approved by the board was 15% of the bonus of every single leader in that team was influenced by customer NPS. Hey, suddenly you know what happened? Everybody's worried about customer feedback. Otherwise, it was an operation problem. Profit, it's an operations problem, not a sales problem. Sales is a sales problem, not an operations problem. How can sales do sales without operations? How can profitability come from operations without sales giving the right business? So you have to have common KPIs. So I just don't like this concept of having my own set of KPIs. The common organization KPI is the same for everyone. Then you could have how it manifests, how you contribute to it, which are your personal objectives. But the KPIs are one.
Oh, I love that. Right. Yeah. Right. Just by having everyone own the customer NPS as a KPI, suddenly they care about it.
Exactly.
Right. And tying it to some reward,
yes,
I suppose. Right.
What gets measured gets done.
Right. And I suppose it also requires you to be quite clear what those lead indicators are.
Yes. It may not be the right one initially. You are fine-tuning it as you go, but you start somewhere.
Right. Okay. Last question. If you were to, write yourself a handwritten note to a much younger you, 18-year-old you, what would you put on it?
Listen more.
Listen more. Why would that be on the note?
We're all, okay, I shouldn't say we all are. A lot of us commit this crime of hearing and not listening. And if I look back, I wished I talked lesser and I listened more. I would have made lesser mistakes. I would have probably done things more efficiently than I did today. Does that mean I would have done anything differently? No, I absolutely cherish that the last 22 years of working and the different experience I've had thanks to the people around me and everything. But yeah, definitely if I had listened more, I would think I would have become even better. And listening is a very difficult skill.
It is, right. Thank you very much for sharing your journey with us today. And, all the best with building the company. I hope it's very interesting. And you say you're going to deploy something in a year's time?
End of the year. We already have
Sabai.
a beta version people are testing.
Okay.
But by the end of the year, it'll be live.
Right. Great. All right. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.